Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good night, and good day to wherever you are. Welcome back to another episode of War in the Webway. My name's Ollie, and as always, I'm joined by my esteemed colleague Alan. Say hello, Alan.
Hello, Ollie. Do you read that from a script?
No. Do you not know it changes every time?
Is it really?
Yeah.
Well,
I forget which way round to do it, so I just change it. Yeah. That's the level of professionalism I'm like. It makes it more fun.
well, it works, mate.
You have to have some way of like starting, right? And if you just start out of the blue, it's just awkward. Anyway, we're back. We're back after a couple of weeks of the codex coming out. Some initial thoughts. We're starting to see some competitive play, and two parts to this episode. First part, we're going to talk about kind of state of the faction. We do this on a semi-regular basis, based on balanced data slates and what we think and where things are falling and what we see and how people are playing the army. And then I kind of want to do a bit of a Q&A. Last video had some good questions. I think we can answer them. We haven't really gone through the comment section. Apologies, we've both been busy, but we want to use this as an opportunity to address some of those questions. So, state of the faction. What do you think? What's your initial thoughts at the moment?
It's pretty much where I thought it would be.
Yeah, exactly.
To be honest, like shit creek. I mean, we've been hit hard, but I think we're still adapting. I'm hoping that we kind of like start to creep up the win percentages. But I mean, what was that percentage you just before we started? Recording this.
So on StatCheck it said 42%, but I don't know if that's got a filter on date or anything. Hang on. Right. Last updated 15.4, so yesterday. But for what period? Over 3,000 games. I don't know what that is.
I remember reading that somewhere on StatCheck on the Reddit or something like that, our win rate in the top 25% of players was less. It was about 23% or something.
Jesus.
Which is just, so for anyone listening, what that means is if you are in the top 25% of players at a tournament, or overall, I believe, I'm not sure how they work that out, but then yeah, if you're going into another player in that bracket, then you've got a 23% chance of winning, which is it just goes to show, right? I mean,
but it kind of makes sense, right? So it's like, what do custodians do now? We spoke about. I'm not trying to do that on this episode, but for the armies that are kind of popular and meta, they all kill us too quickly for us to be able to get there and do anything to them, in my opinion. So if you're playing into meta factions, custodians are just not there, right? How do you punch hypercrypt neck ones out without them doing damage to you? How do you punch out, I don't know, pressure lists or stuff that trades really nicely into custodians?
It's about that balance. It's about that balance, man. I mean, if we need to be effective in shooting combat.
Yes.
Well, so we need both phases of damage output, which means we need good shooting. And if we're going for infantry heavy, that means Alaris or Sag, and Alaris come with a downside, which is expensive.
They're very expensive
and slow,
yep.
And reliant on 9-inch charges out of deep strike, things like that, or pick up and drop. And the Sagittarium are, unless you're taking a Coronis, they're kind of a non-starter. So we're falling back on Caladius, and we're always taking Caladius with the 4 shots because it's so much better than the 8-shot profile.
So I would say
we don't have any like mass shooting that's really, really point for point really good.
So I agree. I would say there is a deceptive amount of shooting from just normal guard. I know when we play, every time that you keep doing all your full rerolls and stuff, and then the double shot, it's always like, oh crap, yeah, actually there's enough for that 1 or 2 turns of, I know it's chip damage, but it's still 2 damage with whatever comes through. It's a nice amount to get out to clear units, not anti-vehicle obviously, but
yeah, I mean, into you, right? I mean, your CSM or
yep.
World Eaters, things like that, right? So into you, it's really good, especially with Draxus, right? Anti-infantry 4+.
But even into Orc Boys, right? Like double shot guard with rerolls isn't going to be the worst thing in the world again into that kind of
They're
profile.
toughness 5.
Oh, that's the point. Yeah, I
Yeah,
always forget that they're new toughness 5.
yeah, they're toughness 5, and I mean your AP doesn't matter. They're going to go to a 5 up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They've got a 5 up in one, but you're only on 5s, and if you're holding an objective against them, great. And you got your full rerolls. They've got like OC a billion. So if you're being aggressive, in all likelihood, you're only going to get rerolls of 1. Your kind of efficiency into them just goes out there. The way that I've been toying with getting good shooting into them is through talons, through the increase of strength. But I don't want to go down talons. That's the problem.
So I was going to say, just in terms of state of the faction, right? Nobody's playing Null Maidens, obviously. Nobody's really playing Auric Champions. I've not seen anybody talking about that. It's between Talons and Shieldhost. And it seems like the majority of people look at Talons and are like, oh, that's quite tricksy. I'm going to play that. I haven't really seen that many people doubling down on Shieldhost. I don't know about yourself.
I mean, I think they said talons has got like a 40 high 40s% win rate. Shieldhost is around 40. Auric is around 30 odd or something, and then Null Maidens is just non-existent. No one ran it. So I think, and you've got to look at where those wins lie, and most of those wins are falling in the bottom half of tournaments.
Yeah, and this is why it's deceptive, right? If you lose your first 2 games and win your next 3, you go 3-2 at a tournament, but you're playing against people. It's a different way of playing, right? So you get a 60% win rate, but you come at it from a different angle, or you lose your first 3 and win your last 2. Then you got a 40% win rate, and everyone's like, oh, okay, that's 2 and 3, but it's not. We're talking about competitive armies that should be able to go 3-0 on day 1, and you're challenging for that fourth win on day 2. That's kind of the mindset here, and I guess if you're more of a casual tournament player, there's nothing wrong with that. You're probably still going to see that 40 to 50% win rate, which is where GW want you, but it's going to be really hard to get you 60% up. It just is.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it. Right? I remember the first time I took my Orion in 8th edition, and I lost my. It was a London Wargaming Guild, one of the like the Winter Warfare ones or something, And I lost my first game against the Sandman, actually.
What was it?
Yeah. When he was running the Dark Angels, it was when it was that really, crazy build where you couldn't actually a Leviathan and everything like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, next 3 games I played were all against people who were heavy on the narrative, and it was just, it was just win path, right? And yeah, it kind of just built it out, and I ended up going 4-1 with an absolute dogshit list, but I just got lucky on the old pairings. I think you mentioned Auric. I think one guy went okay, Auric somewhere in like in Australia, or I'm not sure where, but looking at some of the feed around where it was, I think he's obviously a good player, but I think he had favourable matchups.
Okay.
But he did the party bus. The old Land Raider with like loads of pimped up characters, but again, it goes back to that original question, like how are we losing to kind of top tier players? And it's they either kill us quickly or they easily outscore us.
Yeah.
And both of those are issues for Custodes now. We need to not only survive, we need to kill our opponents to stop them scoring. And when you add those 2 requirements in, there's a lot of lists that I've seen floated around on WhatsApp chats, on Reddit and things like that, right? And a lot of the time I'm looking at a list and going, okay, yeah, that kills quite well. There's a lot of output there, but it doesn't score at all. Or it's vice versa. That's got lots of small squads. That's really good. Blah blah blah. But that's not going to go through Bully Boys. That's not going to go through Necrons. That's not even going to. You're going to need to triple up to kill Magnus now. That's not going to. All the Flavour of the Month lists. It's not going to do anything into. And because of that, you're kind of capped at how well you can do at a tournament.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just reading Reddit as you're talking, and you're right. So that 23% win rate's on Reddit front page. Somebody posted a couple of days ago that Talons are sitting at 50%, Auric at 43%, Shieldhost at 40%. I think people just aren't understanding Shieldhost because I still think it's the best. I do think that's where the play is. I think Talons is gamey and gimmicky, and I think it's actually that's what people are going to crack soon. Auric at 43% looks like it's based on one person. So yeah, it's just echoing everything you just said.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 4-1 with Shieldhost at the moment, so I'm starting to get comfortable with it.
I would say though that you are the exception that can make this work. I've said that before.
Just, I feel comfortable with Shieldhost. If you put me in a Talons list, I would fuck that up turn one. I have no enthusiasm for it. I think I said it on a previous one, and because I have no enthusiasm, I just
You don't want to make it
don't
work.
take care.
Yeah.
I don't take care of my movement and things, and then
So I think what's interesting is, so we've got obviously a side chat to this, and we're working out, or you're working out, I should say, like ways that you can go into Bully Boys or Green Tide and go, where do I get? I'm not thinking you're gonna get a win, but where do I get a game from this? Like, what's the clutch moment that I'm hoping I make some dice rolls and whatever? And I think that's really interesting. You are picking meta factions to go against and making sure that you have an answer. I can't see that at the moment. That's kind of my, I guess, weakness with Custodes. I'm starting to see like, oh, that could be quite a fun list, but I'm going to lose my first 2 games and then probably do that submarining thing.
it's things like so into everyone's been talking about Bully Boys and Green Tide. It's things like, can I get a Caladius from my redeploy to have an angle on a Meganob squad turn 1 when they don't have the Fort Film of Pain?
Yeah, so
things like that.
Just to be clear, there are a few key pieces that you've got in the Shieldhost, and one of those is the redeploy. That is such a powerful play that if you can get an angle with something that's like a Calais tank, it kind of balances it a little bit, right? But you're relying on a little bit of luck. You're relying on player skill to be able to get that angle.
Yeah, and it's things like how do I get rid of a character which gives a 5 from the pain? What tech pieces can I take? Obviously you've got things like the Vindicare. Now, which 50% of the time you all are 1. We've got more CP to spend because our stratagems are pretty shit now, so we've got that capability. You've got the option to make it so they can't have a save or a of any kind, so they're still going to have to feel no pain, but in all likelihood against a 3 wound model, as long as you roll a 2, I think you've got over 50% chance to kill them or something. So there's that option. There's also the tech piece of Greyfax. She's got a really good anti-character gun.
You are relying on. You are still having Draxus in a lot of your lists. The Vindicare is an interesting addition because obviously you've dropped the Caladius assassin, whichever way around that is. But the Vindy makes sense because what you're sitting there going is there's going to be a lot of buffing characters. Green Tide with all their characters. Vindy pops the Pain Boy, and then Green Tide can start to die by chip shooting, some combat. Like it's not going to be an easy game. I'm not trying to say that at all, but there's ways of playing this, right? It's not as clear cut, I think, as maybe just looking at a 40% win rate and thinking, okay,
there are ways to win it. There are ways to win games. There's some games which are just like if you spec for those things and then you come up against something like the Space Marine Iron Storm where they've got 3 Redemptors, you just
there's no answer to it.
Now that
there's no
not for us now that unless we're taking 3 Caladius or something like that, right? And there's no answer because we cannot ignore the -1 damage anymore, and unless we're on our go turn, they're just gonna Armor of Contempt, which means with AP1, and it's 1 damage.
Yep.
It's just an absolute shocker. So you can spec to beat those, right? But
Yeah.
if you do, then you lose
A lot of other players
points.
get most of the
Exactly.
stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. So whereas before we used to be able to take a pretty good list across the vast majority of the field, if we're trying to tech into someone like Necrons or Orcs now, we're going to get absolutely done over by Marines. And if we tech into Marines, then we're not going to have a hope of hell going into. I mean, what's a 4-shot Caladius going to do against 120 boys, right?
Yeah, nothing. Because there's no burst profile, right, anymore. That's all gone.
No. You got 4 shots, and then you've got the 3 piddly ones, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and they've got a 5 up one anyway. Yeah, I mean, if one goes through, it's going to vaporize one.
Yeah.
Then they get what, 2d3 back, or D3 or something.
D3.
Yeah, D3. So you start to really. I mean, what are you going to do? Charge it? Tank shock it? So yeah, you can pop some of their heavier equipment, but that's not the issue.
It's really funny, right? So I've watched quite a few of the YouTube channels running Custodes, and every single one of them are like, they've got some bikes in there, they've got some Alaris, and they got something, I don't know, a Warden squad, maybe 2 Warden squads, some guard, and every single one of them just like, the lists are just poor. So I don't think we're seeing a fair representation on YouTube, at least, of like competitive Custodes, but I don't think there's going to be many people like yourself left trying to make it work. And before the Codex came out, right, we both said, it gets way more interesting if people aren't playing this army. And I'm the same. I'm sending you lists now that I haven't sent before, being like, I'll give that a go. I won't do it to a GT, but I'll take it to an RTT. I need to find some RTTs in June, July, August. I'm going to start playing Custodes in them, because then it's now interesting for me. And if I can get 2-1, that's a great victory. I'll take that, because of how poor the faction is. I think the hard thing for me is, what did GW do to fix it? Because they can't lower the points, because the points don't mean shit. If you say for example, you lower the points by 5% or 10%, you get 200 points back in your army. You get a unit of guard. Doesn't change the problem. Like, it doesn't change the problem. That fundamentally the Codex has no defense, and that's the issue with Custodians.
I think they probably need to. I think they're going to do one of 2 things. They're going to try and fix it, or they're going to think that just by giving us dev wound defense, like every stratagem or ability which gives us defense against mortals or psychic or something, they're going to double up dev wounds into that.
Potentially,
which would be helpful, but it's not going to solve the issue. I think they're going to do that, and then they may also trim some points off. I think fundamentally what they need to do is probably do something like they did for Dark Eldar, and also what they're going to do for AdMech by the looks of it, and that's giving you detachment. Yeah. However, having said that, I think it's such a shame we're 3 weeks into a new book and we're already saying how are they going to fix this.
But you compare it to the CSM preview, and you're and you were like, what the fuck? Like, what? Sorry, there's a lot of swearing. Apologies if you're listening. We try to like keep the language down. but you were aghast, let's put it like that, to say what's going on with CSM, why are you getting all the good stuff? And I was like, this is amazing. It's got so much fluff, it's got the legions, it's got like, I was blown away by the preview for CSM.
There are rules for CSM which are very similar to rules for Custodes. But they just
better.
They're like those ones where you look at it and you say, well, okay, I mean, it's okay to have, but I would prefer you have this one less hoop to jump through, or this added element to it. But they're kind of statically already there for the CSM. But what I was going to ask you is, how do you think CSM coming in is going to impact Custodes? Because I think CSM are going to be quite a force to be reckoned with. So, and what kind of impact do you think that's going to have on us?
It's a fair question, and I genuinely don't know the answer, because I don't know which CSM faction will come to ascendancy, right? So I don't love the Alpha Legion infiltrate one. It's cool, but I don't think I'm going to throw away that much stuff to do it. I quite like the Demon the Demon Engine one. I've already bought a Vastor, which I swore I'd never do, because I was just like, that's cool. I like that. And I like the Demonkin one as well, like the word bearer faction, because I always like my possessed and stuff. So I think it's gonna be interesting, because to me, as somebody who loves combat, I'm looking at Custodes as nothing now, and so I'm thinking I can go toe to toe with them. At least with the old Shieldhost attachment, the Index, having that -1 to hit really screwed up CSM and Wild Eaters and whoever else it was, because you could pop that, and yes, it'd be army wide, but that would give you your breathing space, and you had your fight first, and you had like etc etc. I have fight first in my army. I have combat that's AP2 2 damage. Like it's where I want to be to fight Custodes. And yeah, I think one of the problems with Custodes will be there won't be enough information for GW to actually work out what's wrong with it. They won't have enough reps or playability or whatever. But it's an interesting time to try and make things work. And I think with that in mind, for the rest of the episode, can we turn our attention to some questions that people have asked us?
Yeah, let's do it, mate.
Yeah. So yeah, state of faction summarised. I think we are screwed, which we said before. But you're not dropping them, and I'm now getting interested in them again. So we probably have more content than before. So cool, right? So thank you for everybody that's posted on the previous episode. We always say that we read everything, we message each other, we ask questions. We've just been a bit lax, so we're using this. We're not going to do it every time. Most of the time, we respond in the chat. But there's some interesting questions. There's some interesting questions coming out. Some of the stuff we've already touched on. Some of the stuff I want to build into. I'm not going to read out people's names because that's just dickish. Don't do that. But hopefully we can answer some of these questions. One of the things. Let's start with one of the interesting ones. Somebody's written here. One of the things I'm confused about is the complaint of dev wounds, feel no pains being removed. The reason being that Custodes are weak to them. Who isn't weak to them? The vast majority of Custodes already have a 2+ save, 4+ invuln, and more wounds than the average inventory anyway. So I don't see what the big deal is that they lost the 4+ feel no pain to mortals and dev wounds. We've touched on it, but do you want to kind of give a succinct answer to that? Because I've got a way of doing it, but I think you might be more eloquent.
Yeah. Well, it's just basically make the point, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
So, one dev wound through against a Gene Stealer cult
just kills a small model. Yeah.
Yeah, it kills a small model. You get what's one of them like? 7-8 points, something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. So, one dev wound through on a custodian model. You've got 17, 15, or what's it? 15 points for a guard. More than 15 points for a warden, even more for an Alaris, even more for a bike.
Yeah.
We spoke about it, 17.5 points against the dreadnought. So, in terms of our models are a lot more expensive. We've got a lot fewer of them, and it takes less dev wounds to kill. So that's why Eldar, when we lost our dev wound protection, Eldar was like our worst matchup ever.
Yeah.
Even when, because some people say, oh well, they nerfed dev wounds because they made it so it doesn't spill over. Well, people were still willing to invest in dev wounds to kill Custodes because one model down is a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like, what's a model worth to you? And for a Custodes army, it's worth a lot more than a what's a wound worth to you?
Mm-hmm.
Worth a lot more for a Custodes army than pretty much any other army on the battlefield.
Yeah, I think my thing comes down to two of these. You've mentioned the third one, and I'm totally in agreement. The other one is it's quite a sloggy list. So you move up the board, you get dev wounded. You move up the board, you get dev wounded before you might even be able to make contact. So if I'm running into say CSM and Forge Fiends, they're always going to be doing dev wounds into you because they removed the overlapping defensive buffs. They've removed the -1 damage, for example. You'll have to take that dev wounds on the chin, and then there is no feel no pain. There is no luck. There is no dice to it. You just suffer and are in pain. And I think it's the combination of what they've removed, plus the fact that point for point everything hurts and stings. And yeah, to me, I'm going. So you mentioned Eldar, right? Spiders come in. Spiders kill on average 1.5 custodians just with dev wounds. That's without even making any saves. Second spider unit does the same thing. So you've lost 3, and if you move that unit, they'll overwatch you, and then you lose your last one. So without even interacting with it, 2 spiders units kills guard, whatever the unit might be, on average. That hurts, and there's no interaction there. There's nothing you can do about it. That's kind of the thing that stings there. On an army with maximum 27 models, maybe 30, depending on what you've built, and some of those being sisters.
Yeah, if you've got 30 models, then you're not taking Caladius or transports.
No, exactly. You're not taking.
I mean, also things like, for example, support weapons.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you only need 2 dev wounds out of probably 2 rounds of shooting to wipe an Alara squad. 2 dev wounds through, because they're d6 plus 2, I think it is, or something. And all of a sudden, that's made its points back. So it's a difficult one. There are scenarios where, if, for example, you're running an army which has very limited dev wound output, then I can see probably why you'd be a bit like, well, who cares if Custodes have lost that? That shouldn't matter. But Custodes players, when you come up against an army that dishes out a lot of dev wounds, it can be very feel bad, because
I think as well there's very little way to play around it, right? If I line up 3 Forge Fiends in a row with Abaddon, and you have to move into line of sight, even if you poke one out, cover doesn't matter, right? And I'm just going to try and rinse you.
But if you think about it, I mean, what's on average? How many dev wounds is a Forge Fiend getting through?
Activation. If it's the plasma version or not.
Is it? I mean, you're probably looking at 2 or 3 more, 2 or 3 Custodes dead, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about 2.
Yeah, so I mean, if you got 2 of them shooting at the same target, unless you're a Wardens with your 4 Feel No Pain,
and which forces you to pop it as well, right? So it determines when you're popping it. Yeah.
So you're losing a squad a turn if your opponent has 2 Forge Fiends.
Yeah.
And that's only what 300 points of their army or something.
400.
400. That's 400 points. Yeah, that's 400 points of their army.
But it's also like if you poke your Calidus out, because you're on your 2+ save, people will go for dev wounds at least a little bit. I just think they will, and you will lose your tank. So cover it just ignores cover, it ignores that interaction, because I just don't care about it. But yeah, right. So hopefully that explains it. Many other people might be more eloquent with that, but that's kind of my thoughts. Yeah. Okay. Caveat to this: you can't pick a different unit. Question: what do you think about Alaris as an Ingress unit? I'm between them and a Blake champion with guard. So it's an either or.
What, Blade champion with guard or Alaris?
Blade champion and guard, or Alaris as an Ingress unit.
Oh, Blade champion with guard every day of the week.
And why?
Every day of the week, because when you are playing against opponents that have really thought through their lists and have kind of good, decent lists, they're going to have disposable assets.
Yes.
And when you go into units, or when you rapid ingress, you tend to find yourself on the periphery of the battlefield because they've screened out in such a way, or a little bit further back than you would like. By having a 6-inch move and then an advance and then a charge, you are dramatically increasing your potential reach from your ingress unit.
Yes.
If you are just, say for example, you've got to drop rapid ingress 9 away, however, you're 14 away or 13 away from what you want to be in because he's got screening units.
Mm-hmm.
You move 5, you've still got an 8 or 9 inch charge.
Yeah.
Whereas if you roll a 4 on an advance, all of a sudden, there's a Blade Champion and Guard Squad, you're 4 inches away.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I think that is dramatically different. Now I get what you're saying. Alaris have what people are saying, Alaris are probably more effective. They're slightly tougher. They've got more effective shooting. Blah blah blah. But what are you actually using your? What are you fundamentally using your rapid ingress for? Because if it's for shooting, why not just start them on the board? So you get even more turns of shooting out of them, or something. I don't know. But or why don't you just deep strike them and then shoot and then try a 9-inch charge that way? But fundamentally, you should be using rapid ingress to get on into places that your opponent thinks is secure, into objectives that are slightly out of reach, or into like delicate units that are damage dealers. That's what you should be using them for. And but Blade Champion with Advance and Charge gives you so many more options.
Yeah. So my 2 cents of this is Blade Champion with Guard are cheaper than Alaris. You mentioned it, and that's kind of where I want my focus to be, which is my rapid ingress when I'm doing it with whatever army it is. Usually goes towards objectives. It's to flip an objective. It's to do something to stop somebody else scoring some points. It means your rerolls are going to be coming from your Guard as well as your Alaris. So a lot of the big things that people talk about with the Alaris, obviously the rerolls, but you're going to be getting that from your Guard, and your Blade Champion spikes up with being with the Guard, because and you've been loving your Guard Blade Champion combo, right?
Oh, it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting, especially if you do it on go turn as well. I mean, I think the last time I did it, he only had 5 attacks, but I think I ended up exploding into 8.
Did you really?
Yeah, and then full rerolls to wound, and I think I rolled 4 6s with full rerolls. 12 dev wounds through, and then he still had 2 or 3 more saves, and it was absolutely disgusting. Before the guard had even.
It's just worth caveating. Your dice might not do what Alan's dice do, so please don't write in the comment section if they don't do the same thing.
There's been times where that hasn't happened, and he's bombed out. But when it goes off, you've got to put yourself in a position where if it goes off, it goes off.
Yeah.
And him into what it was, I can't remember what he was into. It's absolutely disgusting when it goes off. And unfortunately, you get full rerolls with Alaris into that kind of thing. But it's like what we said a while ago. Some person on like Reddit had like a personal vendetta against us because.
And if you're still listening, yeah, we hold the grudge, but no, we don't.
It was really funny because they started saying about like what was it they said? I can't even remember, to be honest.
The one that said we don't know what we're talking about because we said that Alaris are terrible. Yeah,
we said that was it. We said Alaris don't have as much output.
Yeah,
and there was a lot of people were saying, well, no, actually, this one person was saying, I don't get it. They've got exactly the same weapon, exactly the same number of attacks, and they have rerolls. And again, I think we mentioned it. It's all down to damage potential versus actual damage output. Like, if I was to get an Achilles into combat, the damage output is going to be nuts, right? With a 5-up explosion turn. But how many times do I get in a combat?
So, just to be really clear with that, and so Reddit doesn't go mad at us again. This is all about, on paper, if you're rolling 5 dice on one and 5 dice on the other, it's the same output. But it's the potential to get where you want to go. You're Alaris rapid ingress and can't get past the screen. So they get into the screen, somebody might be able to shoot them with dev wounds and chip them away, and then they waddle up 5 inches, or they go from golden light and come back down, and it's still a 9-inch charge. You also have to remember that once you rapid ingress them down and do the from golden light back up and come back down, you can't rapid ingress them again because they go back into your strategic reserves and have to come back in that next turn. That's right? When they from golden light, they can't come. You can't delay it until to be rapid ingressed. So
I think it's the same principle as the Grey Knights one.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain it is that they have to come back in once they do from golden light. But either way, I think that the Alaris are interesting. I'm more interested in them now than I was in the Index. But if that is your direct comparison, to me, there's no comparison.
Yeah. There's no kind of like, there's no world where if someone was to say to me, based on today's meta, would you rather rapid ingress there? If you were talking about what's coming out of a transport, I'd say, okay, there's more discussion there. But if you're saying what's coming out of rapid ingress, I'd say there's only one.
Yeah,
There's only one option between those two, for me anyway.
agree. Right. This one's interesting, and this is going to be more of a you question than a me question because it's one of your favourite models, maybe.
Oh god.
Can you also tell me how to use the Land Raiders with my Wardens and Blade Champion?
Um, what's this? My favorite, one of my
You've,
favorite
you've,
models. I like
you've been
it.
trying to play around with the Land Raider for a while.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
considering how big and bulky the damn things are, you are adamant to try and see if it can work.
It's got smoke.
It has got smoke.
Yes, we don't have access really to smoke or grenades outside of Inquisitors, that is. So, it's got smoke, so it's all, like the amount of times that smoke has kept me alive. Um, it's got, it's basically got two really good delivery mechanisms for Blade Champions. But number one is obviously it's got assault ramp.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can move up your 10 inches and then you get out three, so you've got a 13-inch um, kind of movement from the back or from the front really of your Land Raider to where your disembarked models are, and then you can charge
Yeah.
with a reroll as well. So if your opponent is, say for example, your opponent goes first, can't kill your Land Raider, but they've committed a decent number of kind of squishy or kind of valuable units a little bit further forward from the deployment, then there's potential for a bit of a cheeky charge turn one for you. If not, you can move up, and then if you get first turn, you can move up, hide, smoke, and or toe into cover, so to speak, with a tread or something, and then move back out and move up again in your turn two, and then you're gonna have some real reach from kind of the assault ramp. So there's that.
It's a
But the
big
main
model
one,
though. It's a
it
very
is.
it's a very big model that can't fly, even though fly's terrible. It has to go around buildings, right? But it's a great
Yeah,
staging piece. If
yeah,
you
but
can,
it is a big model. But with our redeploy
yeah, it's true.
now, you're effectively redeploying two units,
Yeah,
or
it's
even
true.
three if you've got two units inside it, right? Because you can move it and whatever's inside it, and that counts as one. So if your opponent lines up a lot of anti-tank, you can get out of a dodge. So
Is the redeploy
yes,
once you know who's going first? It is, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it is, yeah,
So basically, you can put it somewhere, and then if you know you're going first, whack it out, get it to being staged. Perfect.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
nice.
So, or on some of the maps, you can. What I like to do on some of the maps is move it. If I know I'm going first, put it up, move it, advance it, so I can actually get behind one of the bigger L's. Um, and then the Blade Champion, I don't necessarily rely on the assault ramp. I can just disembark, move
Advance.
six because that gives you nine
Yep.
from where you've disembarked. Then you advance. Say for example you roll a three, you've got 12-inch movement, and then you've got a rerollable charge. So you're looking at reliably charging 19 to 20 inches roughly. Maybe between 18 and 19 inches charge. Now that is a deceptively large amount of distance. That's if you're already halfway up, you're already kind of like on a no man's land objective. You're going to be getting into their deployment, or you're going to be hitting the middle. So in other words, you've got pretty much half a board that you can go into unless your opponent's staying well back. In which case you're probably just outscoring them anyway. So it gives a lot of options. It also gives protection. It gives dev wound protection. It gives protection against a lot of weapons that quite easily kill us now that we've lost a lot of our protection. For example, the Fortrines. You know, um, it's I don't know. I mean, how do you play, or what do you see the solutions are when you come up against a Custodes list with a Land Raider?
So it, you, you're exactly right. And I just want to build on that and then I'll answer that question, which is the way that I'm building my Custodes theory crafts are all about transports, because the transports provide the defense that we haven't got. So on that go turn, Custodes still slap. On the go turn when we played, they killed so much, and I was just like, oh shit, that's still interesting, right? That's still got the potential. But what they lack is defense. And so most of my lists are double Coronas, because I have to buy 2 Coronases. If you're listening, my missus, I won them. I definitely didn't buy them. But I need to buy 2 Coronases to be able to do the staging, because I think if you can rapid ingress something down, you've got 2 things coming out from your Coronases, or 4, depending on what you're building. I'll share my list at some point, because I think it's fun. God knows if it's going to work. Then that go turn is so much forward pressure, which is incredible. So I love transports for Custodes. I just don't love Land Raiders, because I think Land Raiders are very big, and depending on the tournament and depending on what gets ruled, if it's where the las cannons are or the hull, because people play it differently. I've seen people not be able to go round walls because the sponsoons are slightly too wide, which is stupid. In terms of looking at it, I'm going. So what happens for me is if I'm playing into somebody with a Land Raider or with a Coronas, I'm thinking, can I pop it and start doing damage to the thing inside of it? If the answer is no, I'm finding softer targets, which allows them a chance to push up. And once they're out of it, I'm hoping that I can survive. I'm hoping I can hit back. That's kind of the mindset. But yeah, for me, it's like that transport offers a kind of different opinion. If you're playing Custodians without transports, I think I'm much happier, much happier. But everything you said about that Blade Champion and Wardens, I completely agree with. Just seconded it. And the other thing as well, right, is Wardens are so powerful still. Wardens haven't massively changed since the index. But where and when you pop the 4++ is really important. And what you don't want to do is pop it in the shooting phase when they haven't done anything. So the way I always think of Wardens is, I want to get them in to combat with the Blade Champion, smash something, don't get smashed in return because you killed everything. Next turn, either weather the shooting or pop it, and then weather the combat and then hit back and kill something else. That's my trade piece right there, right? If you're moving the Wardens up and you have to pop the 4+, feel no pain because you've got no transport or you've got no protection, or you've got to try and make a 9-inch charge, which I always found 9-inch charges. So now they're out in the open, you won't get the best out of them. So personally, I would always run Wardens, at least one lot of Wardens in a transport of some description, and rapid ingress the second unit down.
Yeah, it's a real kind of like, we're fundamentally going to be shifting towards how can we increase our durability, and I think that transports offer us a key area there, and there's a lot of lists, a lot of armies that can't pop them.
No.
For whatever reason, that they're either crap at shooting or they don't have enough output. There's a lot of armies that can't pop them, which means we are completely free to choose when and where the engagement in melee starts.
I would also say that once you get the thing out of it, I'm already trying to think about how I load something else back into it. So a game is 5 turns, right? So if turn 1 you're staging because nothing happens in turn 1, turn 2 you're smashing something, but I'm already trying to load something back into my Land Raider or back into my Cronus or back into whatever transport I might be using. So that way turn 3 or 4 I've got something else to come out and smash. Like, they aren't just a one and done type usage. So that's also how I'm trying to build it, right? I'm trying to build with things that can get back into it and move on. Alright, so the final question I've got, I want to kind of cover, and it's kind of it's one that I read and it made me really kind of think, and it's a really fair question. It is a really fair question, and I sound quite sad when I'm saying it because I don't really know the answer, so I want to kind of pick your brain on this. And so somebody has written, how do people switch if they can't buy a new army or can't afford to buy Forge World and vehicles? I've got 30 Guard, 18 Wardens, and 6 Alaris. I don't have any Sisters of Silence or Land Raiders. But if I try and save up and buy that, it'll be 11th edition by the time it comes out. So, what do I do to be able to play? And I think, well, I'll open it up to you, and then I've got my opinions on this. But like, you've got the guard, the wardens, the Alaris. Let's say you've got a handful of characters. You have an infantry custodians list, the version that Index wanted you to play all that time ago. There are no vehicles. What do you do?
I think that's where this codex is. I think really. I mean, it's fallen short in a lot of areas, to be honest. But I think it's probably really fallen short here.
Yeah.
Because it has. I mean, look, you don't need sisters
No.
to play Talons. They're better if you've got them.
Yeah.
You don't need it. You don't need sisters to play Shieldhost. You don't need sisters to play Auric. I think what sisters give you is point scoring. So if it was me and I only had those models, I would try and do it so that as many of my infantry started off the board as possible. And I would be basing my army around rapid ingress and deep strike, and because we can't put blobs on objectives anymore and just survive, I would be doing as many small squads as possible with as many characters as possible. If you don't have the characters, just proxy. And obviously, make a little note of which models are which, and then just do it that way. I think if you're going infantry heavy, I would always run 3 blade champions, because you need that as much movement as you can give, and advance and charge gives that. Outside of that, I would just say you're gonna come up against some really shocking matchups if unless you're playing against mates who can kind of make lists that they're going to be kind of conducive to both players having fun. If you go to a tournament or you're in some kind of competitive playing, then just having those models as an option is going to be unfortunately not very not very effective.
So, my take on this is that's really hard. It's really hard because GW have an idea of how people need to play certain armies, and with what that's listed, 30 guard, 18 wardens, 6 Alaris, it's kind of going, here's some bodies. There's no defense there or anything else like that. I like your idea to start as much off the board. I think this is a potential list that Talons and Shieldhost maybe not, but Auric champions maybe, because you just go character spam and just see what you can do and try and annoy people. I think you'd have to instantly lower your expectations and try and find the fun. So I try and it's hard, right? Because you've played me enough times that I get a little bit salty. I get very salty when I start losing. So please take this with a massive hypocrite saying it, but you have to try and find the part of this game that makes you still love the game. I, for example, wouldn't go away to tournaments with that kind of list. And one of the hard parts about this channel is that we are competitive Custodes players, as we keep saying, and we say it all the time, because a lot of our criticisms or a lot of our feedback come from the viewpoint of trying to get a 4-1. It doesn't come from the feedback of just trying to play this army or trying to understand it. It's trying to play it as well as we possibly could. And I have no idea how to play an army, a game like that. And there's actually another very interesting question. I've now thought of it. I saw it somewhere. I'll ask, but that is it's a very, very hard place to play. As Alan said, try and find friends or friendship groups where you go, look guys, I haven't got the stuff. If you're going to want to bring the latest hotness, I can't play that. But if you just kind of want to see, try and play different points levels, try and play boarding action, try and play boarding patrol, combat patrol, try and play 1,000 points. Like, I think if you're trying to play 2K points and trying to play into meta armies, you're going to absolutely hate this game.
I mean, if someone turns up and says, right, okay, what have you got? And you say, I've got, 20 guards, some Wardens, and some Alaris, and they go, okay, right, here's 18 rates, a couple of Catans, and all that, and you're just like,
well, it's not a game.
No, it's not going to happen. Or even here's 3 Redemptors, and you're just like,
yeah. And it's basic armies that other people will definitely have that I think everybody thinks Custodes is a really easy beginner army, and again, we've spoke about this before. I'm not going to try and rehash that, but that is a very good example of somebody who's got like an army. They've bought their boxes, they've done the combat patrols or whatever else. I don't know which characters you might have there, and gone, okay, cool. Like, I'm happy that I can play my bricks. Oh no, can't play bricks anymore. No defense. Okay, so like, what do I do? And I honestly don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, which is a shame, and I think John Lennon actually really hit the nail on the head. That if you are someone who perhaps doesn't have a lot of disposable income to invest in the hobby, then one of the most attractive armies, or if not the most attractive army, is Custodes.
Yeah.
So what Games Workshop have done by making this army, or by releasing this set of rules,
is elitist.
Is, I wouldn't say elitist, but it's kind of meant that you look at the detachments and there are no obvious paths of playing the game. There's no like, right, this detachment is meant to play like this.
Which we, and again, want to go back to our predictions. We were so convinced that there was going to be a Solar Watch 1 and a Shadowkeepers 1, and like ways of playing the game that, infantry heavy with characters would definitely be Shadowkeepers, or bikes and grav tanks would definitely be Solar Watch, or whatever it might be. And I think that's the thing that I'm most shocked by the Codex in, that there is just realistically 2 playstyles, of which one everyone else is counting, and they're all looking at Talons.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so look at the CSM Codex that's coming out.
Yep.
Every single detachment there has play, but it also has an identity, but also right, this is what it's supposed to do. These 3 or 4 stratagems are designed to impact that. And then you look at the Shieldhost stratagems, and you say, right, what interaction does the Shieldhost stratagems have with the detachment rule? How do I make my detachment rule better for my army through the use of stratagems? And then you look at, or vice versa, and then you look at the Bully Boys, or you look at the so you look at Bully Boys, and it's like, you can call it the war twice.
Yeah.
Well, what benefit does that have? Well, it benefits knobs. It benefits
feel no pains.
Feel no pains, but a bit, mega knobs, blah blah blah. So the detachment rule has a direct impact on the units.
Yeah.
You look at the detachment rules for any of our detachments, and there's no clear interaction between the enhancements, the stratagems, and the abilities, and that is, I think, a failure of fundamental understanding of A, how to write rules, but B, the faction. I would hazard a guess that whoever wrote the rules doesn't play Custodes.
I would agree with that.
Or played them very entry level and put blobs on objectives and thought, oh, this is too easy.
Yeah,
and
I think so.
And that's all it was. I think they
played it in isolation. They didn't play it with the rest of the game.
Exactly. Yeah. But like I said, we've got what we've got. We've got to try and make it work, and we've got to try and run with it.
Agree. Right. Final question for me, and we've waffled on again as we always do.
God, we haven't we?
Yeah, it's 54 minutes now. So if you've made it this far, every time we do this, just so if you've made it this far, every time we do this, we go, we're going to keep it short this time. We're going to keep it nice and concise. Let's try and talk about this, and we waffle on. But I have a final question for you, or final challenge for you, should you wish to do it. One of the questions I've seen on a previous video, it's not on this one, is what do you play if you don't like Forge World? Would you take to an RTT, not to a GT, but to an RTT, a pure Codex Custodes army? Is there any way that you can play that, do you think?
Yeah. It's basically...
Because I think that might be interesting to see like how you do and like what things you run into.
Yeah, it's basically infantry, one land raider, load of sisters,
Would you take
load of
Dread?
characters.
Vendread?
Pardon?
Would you take a Vendread?
No, I wouldn't. No. It's too many. There was all this hoo-ha. Oh, Vendread's dropped to like 170. Oh my god.
He gets
You
back
kidding
up.
me? Are you kidding me? 170 for that.
He gets back up.
It's absolutely nuts. All of our walkers, all of our dreads are just... It is insane. The points are just disgusting. But anyway, you would go probably max Wardens, or if not 2, you'd go 2 or 3 squads of guard. With cheeky characters, you go a Land Raider, maybe 1 or an Alara squad to go in a Land Raider, and then you'd get Draxus in with one of the guard squads, and then whatever points you have left, you just spam sisters.
Interesting. Do you reckon you go 2-3 with that? Sorry, 2-1 with that?
It completely depends on matchups, right?
Yeah.
Completely depends on matchups.
I reckon that could be interesting to try and do.
Yeah, I mean, you've got no...
For you, not for me.
You're only reliant on your last cannons, anti-tank, right?
Would you take two Land Raiders for anti-tank?
I don't know, mate. That's 480 points.
Yeah, but it protects your Wardens, which is like the thing I was saying about trying to get them to where you need them to be without popping the 4++. It's 8 las cannons, like...
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I only own 1. So, but I've never run 2.
I have 1.
Back in the day when Eldar used to have loads of flyers.
Do you remember the CP, the strat that had, if you had 2, it's +1 to hit or something like
that? If you had 2 linked, you ignored all modifiers.
That was it. Because
so
I have 4, but I then used them for my 6.
I ran my Grey Knights Land Raider as a Custodes Land Raider. I remember going into a tournament with a guy who had 6 Eldar flyers.
Oh!
Or like -2, or one of them was -3 to hit because of Phantasm or something.
Yeah.
And I just did that, and I think turn 1 I killed 3.5, 4 flyers or something.
Them's all the days.
And I was just like, he got really salty, and I just said, well, you're trying to make guard hit on 6s, Marines hit on 6s, You can sod off.
Do you remember those days of 8th edition where modifiers were uncapped?
Oh, it was disgusting, wasn't it?
You're -14, but I'm +13, so it's actually -1. Fuck off. Right. Anyway, right. Look, now we're definitely waffling, but I think there could be an interesting play there of taking just a Codex army and see what we do. I'm happy to do it with you. I'm happy to both do Codex only armies and see what happens into an RTT, like a local one. I'm not travelling for it. I'm not going to be paying anything to stay out or anything else like that. But
yeah, it's not that. We'll go local, like a Bad Moon Cafe or something.
Yeah. So something like that, just to see what you can actually get away with. All right, cool. Any final thoughts from you? I think we've aired it out enough.
No. I mean, we're going to the ITT in a couple of weeks.
Yes, we are. If you
go and you see us there, come say hi. And then
we'll be playing under the team War Boys, just so everybody knows.
War Boys, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll, depending on how well if I don't win anything, we won't mention it. If I win 1 or 2 of my games, I'll give a feedback. I don't particularly think teams is that relevant to singles.
No.
It may be interesting, certain combinations that I'm planning to run. I don't want to. I'm still finalising my list, so I don't want to spill any beans. But there's a few things, spec pieces that might transfer over to singles, which I think will be really interesting.
I think teams gives us an interesting chance to try and get you into stuff you want to go into, though. Because if you get it wrong, I think Custodians lose heavy, right? So,
I've made a list, which means that I can go into armies that I know I'm going to lose against. But I'm going to lose.
This is so off topic. This is so off topic.
After the ITT, we'll talk about it.
Coming soon to an episode near you.
Coming soon.
If you've made it this far, as always, thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, speak to you next time.